The entire tale kicks off in the plaza of the Andalusian Empire, where a girl is sprawled out, her hands and feet shackled by chains. A guy asks if the Great Master Senti is all set to sacrifice the Black Dragon 6, who seems a bit unsure if he can handle it all at once. The person next to him chimes in that the Black Dragon needs to be placed right under this dragon's heart. Actually, something went down last month. He foolishly attempted to swipe the main dragon from the public mountain only to get booted out and stir up quite the ruckus. It wasn't long before people started screaming as the massive black dragon came barreling in, aiming straight for the girl on the ground. He snatched up the girl who was the bait, and the mage shouted for everyone to start attacking, so the crowd kept firing away. But the dragon still managed to fly off. Later, the dragon landed with the girl and flopped down, grumbling, but ended up making some sounds that even surprised him. He couldn't wrap his head around the fact that his words were mixing with some dragon noises, and he was taken aback when he noticed he had gigantic claws. When he fell, he felt pain until he caught a glimpse of himself in the water's reflection and realized he had turned into a dragon. He wondered if he had been sent to another reality and transformed into a dragon or something like that, and on top of that, a really bizarre dragon. Then he glanced to the side and spotted a girl, which made him anxious about whether she was all right. She didn't look too good at all. She seemed like a classic case of a sickly, pretty girl, and he pondered what she would think of a dragon's breath like his. That's when he suddenly got a notification welcoming him from the Plunder System, which was at his service. To his surprise, it wasn't just one but 3 systems that greeted him. Besides War and Plunder, the villain system and the transformation system were also at his disposal. The dragon was so impressed that he might actually be chosen for something legendary. The system was ready to kick things off with the fusion system. It was the ultimate system for unbeatable super evolution. He wondered what the evil dragon system could do. Apparently, the host didn't need to say a word. Special abilities could be activated just by winning over a special female NPC, and that was that. He could spend system points to remodel any part of his body, too. And the dragon was left wondering what that even meant. He questioned if this whole player and NPC thing was merging some game reality or something similar. He could click on the enemy's point to take them out and gain half the power of justice. And soon, the system noted he had plundered an SS class SE female NPC subway SETI. Thus, the system privileges weren't activated yet, and he could see the girl mumbling because she was cold lying on the ground. The protagonist took a moment to gather the books scattered around to read and try to figure out what was happening. It was still shocking that he was interested in this stuff, even when in his past life he was a guy named Sunayan. The dragon tried to let the girl rest on his tail, but she was still shivering as the classification was truly extraordinary. It seemed he really was the great chosen one. The system soon detected the SS rank NPC and was able to display the character panel. The girl was 18 years old, hungry, cold, and afflicted with a disease with only a few days left to live. Only 2 days remained until her life would slip away, and the protagonist was taken aback that her life could be tossed aside so quickly. As expected, there was no free lunch in any world, and he got anxious because the girl kept making those embarrassing sounds while sleeping, so he covered her with bare skin he found while scavenging the area. He hoped that would keep her warm. He gained 10 more favorability points. Wrapping her in a blanket boosted his favorability a little more. Things seemed pretty straightforward to fix. He asked the system for something to boost favorability, but the system just laughed at him and refused. The protagonist was furious because he had a body, he couldn't even move, was on the brink of death, and wondered how he could find food to earn favorability. He at least wanted a starter pack or something like that, and the system informed him that he actually made a valid point, so it issued a beginner starter pack with a 30-minute temporary recovery card. He should use the temporary recovery card to boost his strength temporarily, but it would leave him weak for an hour after the effect wore off. So after using the card, he needed to hightail it back home. The protagonist was a bit stunned by the kind of power he just received, but using the card was his only option at that moment since he was too weak to move. He told the system he wanted to activate the temporary recovery card. He received a notification confirming it was activated. At this point, he could only value his life. Once he left the cave, the protagonist approached a tree and realized that as a dragon, he couldn't just munch on grass or any random thing. He needed to hunt for some meat, otherwise he would starve. It didn't take long for him to gather a decent amount of meat, but he soon discovered it belonged to other creatures. A pack of level 3 magical beasts appeared to defend their turf. The wolves had a strong sense of territory. Apparently, he had stumbled upon their food stash. which is why they suddenly jumped out to protect it. Being a dragon was no walk in the park, but he couldn't shake off the nervousness and decided to just charge at the unexpected foes. It didn't take long for the protagonist to wipe out the monsters and return to the cave, radiating a terrifying aura that made the girl shiver in fear. Meanwhile, the protagonist kept wondering why she still hadn't woken up. She seemed really sick. But if she kept passing out, feeding her would be a challenge until she suddenly sprang up and yelled at the villain to back off. She attempted to attack him, but he simply brushed it off and popped an apple in her mouth, creating a hilarious moment. She spat out the apple, asking if he planned to eat her, and he thought to himself that he wouldn't do anything like that. In reality, from Anna's perspective, the great dragon was just roaring at her in a terrifying manner. It was so shocking that she fainted from fear, and he wanted to wake her up again, even though she had already lost consciousness. The protagonist asked what was wrong with Anna, and the system informed him that she had a high body temperature that could lead to fainting. The protagonist mentioned he had just taken down a silver moon wolf, so he should have points in the system. The system confirmed he had managed to kill 3 second-order silver moon wolves. They were just defending themselves, so the system points were halved. Now he had earned 30 system points, and they congratulated him for scoring his first system points. A system shop was now open. He needed to find something to cure the girl's illness, and the system analyzed his current state to determine the best option. It recommended that he use 10 system points for a special offer to exchange for the Chinese herbal medicine, Huanqin. Huanqin was a Chinese remedy used for high fever, and he wondered if the system store had items from Earth and his previous world. He asked the system to get the Huanqin for him, and soon the item materialized in his hands. Taking the medicine, he asked how to use it, but it seemed only he could make it work. He consumed the item and blew his breath onto Anna's face, which ended up affecting her. And the protagonist realized too late that he was feeling the effects of the temporary card's time limit. His body could no longer keep up. He felt incredibly heavy. Meanwhile, Anna woke up in a cozy spot feeling extremely thirsty. When she looked up, she saw the great black dragon soaring toward her, so she ducked down, crying in fear. A little later, she woke up tasting a bitter medicine in her mouth. This time, she found herself in the cave with the dragon nearby. Anna wondered if she had truly been saved by him, and the protagonist gained 20 more favorability points. The girl noticed that the dragon had also gathered fruits just for her, which made her smile because the dragon seemed quite kind. Consequently, the protagonist earned 40 more favorability points, and she approached to try to wake the dragon up. Anna grew worried because he wasn't moving, making him seem dead, and she wondered if it was due to the stab she inflicted earlier. She urged the dragon to recover, soon gently caressing him, and the system alerted the protagonist with a new notification. The favorability reached the requirement for the first stage. Congratulations on obtaining the Beginner Devouring skill with 2,000 points. Beginner Devouring was a skill that allowed him to eat to quickly restore his body and generate a certain amount of energy. However, the food intake would also feed it. Now, this skill was solidified. Sometime later, the protagonist woke up, feeling hungry, puzzled as to how he could feel that way since he had just eaten meat. When he finally woke up, it felt like he had dozed off and somehow gained a new skill. He was almost giddy, thinking he had pulled off something so easy just by luck. Still, every fiber of his being was practically screaming for food. He could hardly hold himself back. Glancing over, he spotted Anna fast asleep and briefly entertained the idea of using her as a snack. But he took a deep breath to steady himself. He couldn't eat her, especially since her favorability rating was at 90 points. What shocked him the most was realizing he had also racked up 90 favorability points with Anna. He wondered when that had happened. Did something go down while he was catching Z's? Maybe she was just blown away by his sheer awesomeness. He was big and mighty. She might have even developed a crush on him. But he snapped back to reality when he noticed her coughing up blood. Realizing that Anna had suddenly become very weak, the system explained that besides gaining abilities, conquering an NPC also granted him 2,000 system points. He had hit the basic threshold for body modifications, unlocking that feature. He figured he was partly to blame. He just had no clue what kind of illness she was dealing with. Using medicine to keep her alive wasn't exactly a long-term fix. The protagonist opened the system shop and was stunned to find various items from his original world, which was mind-blowing. After all, it took 10,000 points to buy anything. Only a lunatic would spend that much on such basic stuff. He wondered if the system shop could really be like this, while an unconscious girl was suffering right beside him. He even spotted a gorgeous dress that would look fantastic on her. He bought the dress to put on her. When Anna wore it, he had to turn his head away. He couldn't bear to look because dragons had barbs underneath. But before worrying about clothes, he needed to tackle her illness first and instructed the system to activate the body modification feature. There were external modifications, reinforced teeth for 400 points, iron scales for 400 points, and a general appearance modification for 10,000 points. Internal modifications could be categorized as blood vessels, heart muscles, facial features, and internal organs. The protagonist decided to kick things off by searching for modifications related to medical treatment, selecting an item that provided a basic understanding of certain conditions. This one was unique, and he opted for the eye modification with basic insight. The system announced that the modifications would commence immediately. He was warned that discomfort might occur during the process, so he shouldn't worry too much. When the changes began, he complained because the pain was intense and he was even scratching at his eyes. But with that, he could assess Anna's condition. Analyzing her twisted ankle and minor abrasions, he was amazed that she was still alive after all that. Suddenly, a group of people appeared at the cave entrance, claiming they had seen dragon breath not long ago. There must be one nearby. The group of black mercenaries showed up, but in the protagonist's eyes, they were just a bunch of weaklings. Among them was a level 21 knight named Wells and Selena, a level 18 fire mage. The protagonist realized these mercenaries were not there for a friendly chat or anything nice, so he instructed the system to modify his basic claws and teeth. Scales could also be upgraded. The modification would begin immediately and cost 1,000 system points. It didn't take long for his entire body to undergo a rapid transformation. When he emerged from the cave, the protagonist encountered the group of mercenaries, and they all watched him soaring through the skies. Wells shouted for everyone to prepare for battle, and Selena questioned if that black dragon was really the same one as before, since it looked so different. She warned everyone to be ready because something felt off, and Wells called her a coward for acting that way. He told everyone to disregard Selena's words. If she hadn't flubbed the binding spell in the previous encounter, maybe they could have captured the black dragon from the start. Selena was furious at his harsh words, while Wells simply ordered everyone to keep their eyes on the black dragon flying west. They needed to follow him. She was stunned, wondering why he was heading deeper into the forest toward the outer edge. She starts to wonder if the dragon's treasure might be in that direction. He could be trying to lead them off course to stay under the radar. The main character keeps soaring through the sky, grabbing everyone's attention before diving at the mercenaries and taking them on. His score just keeps climbing as he takes down each foe. As he charges at the dragon to finish it off, he's shocked to find that his attacks don't even leave a mark. The protagonist turns around laughing. He had been curious why his back was itching. It felt like fleas, but it was just the weak hits he was feeling. Wells was fuming, unable to wrap his head around how this was even possible, and the protagonist tells him to save those questions for his next life. It didn't take long for Wells to be taken down, and all the mercenaries bolted in panic because the Great Knight had been defeated. But the dragon wasn't about to let them slip away that easily. They were all going to become system points to boost his strength. The system congratulated the protagonist, even though a few managed to escape. Regardless, he racked up 150 system points from the fight. Still, it felt like someone was missing, and he turned around, recalling that the mage had stayed behind. When the protagonist returned to the cave, he found Selena casting healing magic on Anna, but she freaked out when she saw him rise. Selena stood up, warning the dragon to stay back. She was trying to save Anna's life, even though she was scared for her own. She cast a spell to keep the dragon at bay, but quickly ran out of energy. The protagonist didn't get what was going on, watching the protagonist squirm where he stood, and the dragon stuck due to the magic. Selena laughed right in his face. The dragon grew tired of toying with her and shattered the spell with one swipe, knocking Selena down with his paw and stopping her from casting any more spells. He asked who sent her there, but realized he was just growling and got worried since he should be able to speak human language now. He wanted to chat and asked the system how many points he'd need to tweak his vocal cords. The system replied that modifying his vocal cords would require 300 system points, and he currently had 280. The system also offered a loan service now. The loan came with an additional 50% interest and asked if he wanted to give it a shot. The protagonist froze in disbelief. After all, 50% was a hefty sum. It felt like he was being robbed in broad daylight. The system simply stated it couldn't perform actions that broke system laws, which made the dragon sigh. He figured this was the only option for now and asked the system to go ahead with the vocal cord modification. The modification was successfully completed. This loan, including principal and interest, would require repayment of 330 points to the system later. Setting that aside, the protagonist interrogated Selena to find out who sent her and what her mission was. The girl was taken aback that he could talk this whole time, but he kept insisting she spill the beans quickly because he was running low on patience. She replied that they were mercenaries hired by King Amlas to hunt the black dragon and provide nourishment for the prince of the kingdom. The protagonist asked what they meant by nourishment, and she explained there were rumors that Prince Alias had issues growing hair. Only by consuming the heart of a dragon and its private parts could he be cured. The protagonist couldn't believe what he had just heard. Meanwhile, Prince Amlas was stunned because they still hadn't tracked down the black dragon and questioned whether they were any good at all. Amlas asked his knight what Master Mason had said. The knight replied that Mason had transformed into a dragon. He inherited the original dragon's power at the 8th level and in just 1 month managed to cross the Jin Mountains. But using the tracking formation drained a lot of energy and magical materials. In fact, Mason said they would have to pay him more than before. Amlas was shocked because they had already given him 3,000 gold. Yet the old man still wanted even more, even after being knifed. Still, he ordered that they hand over another 500 gold. If that wasn't enough, then nothing else would be. Meanwhile, in the cave, the dragon kept the mage occupied for a while, focusing on learning more from the system. He could use the available healing potion of resistance. There was also the accelerated aura potion for meditation. The protagonist approached Selena asking if she could heal him, but she refused to heal a dragon. So the protagonist sighed and released Selena, and took her to where Anna was. A girl asked if he even realized that Anna was a princess. The dragon replied that he had no idea, even thinking that not just anyone could be an SSS rank NPC. Selena asked if he planned to rescue her, and the protagonist agreed because, after all, they were good friends with a favorability score of 90 points. He figured it should count for something, or at least that's what he wanted to believe, which left Selena stunned. But Anna eventually found out later that even Selena was SSS rank, and he felt relieved that he hadn't wasted his points on her at the start. Setting that aside, the protagonist asked how Anna was holding up. Selena said they shouldn't get their hopes up. She had taken so much damage that even a recovery potion wouldn't be nearly enough. He asked what else she might require, and Selena replied that a clean and tidy environment, plenty of medicine and food, and a skilled priest would be ideal. The protagonist questioned why they needed to find a priest, and she explained that she wasn't actually a professional mage specialized in healing. Nearby, Anna woke up asking them to stop bickering. She was thankful enough and expressed her gratitude to the dragon for trying to help. He felt relieved to see her awake. But he could sense that Anna was emotionally fragile. She needed some comfort at that moment. With that in mind, he moved closer, and Selena reminded him that just because Anna said she was okay didn't mean he could chow down on her. Ignoring Selena, he approached and ripped off the heavy chains from her body. It seemed they needed to find a new place to stay. He held them both and said that this spot was no longer safe. They should find a new shelter quickly. Anna agreed, and just like that, he gained 10 more favorability points, reaching a total of 100 points. The protagonist received a system notification letting him know he had hit 100 favorability points for the first time, and so he earned 1,000 system points as a reward. The three of them moved to another location where he could prepare some meat, and the girls were thrilled by the delicious aroma of the food. While they were busy eating, suddenly the protagonist froze upon seeing a group of demi-beasts watching them, sensing that something was off. But to his utter shock, the demi-beast approached and touched the dragon. Astonished that he was indeed a real dragon, he never thought he would see a living dragon in his entire life, and even bowed, declaring he would offer the Broken Fang tribe and become his servant. That was a man with a dog's head named Poor Curie of the 7th level. And just like that, the protagonist found himself in front of a tribe swearing loyalty to him. The protagonist said he really was weak. There was no point in having them as servants, and they couldn't even be true allies anyway. Porikuri responded with laughter, saying that even though they were weak, they could find a dragon's lair, mines, and scales just for him. They could even plan a glorious future for his wealth. But the dragon didn't understand any of it. They didn't seem worried about losing anything in the end. Everything would depend on the group's sincerity. But now he needed a spacious and dry dragon's lair, and asked if they could keep their promise by helping with that. Porikuri agreed with the words of his lord, and so the group headed toward a place where there was food in cluster houses. That was where the Broken Fang tribe lived, and the protagonist received a notification saying he was gaining favorability points from Anna and Selena. From that day forward, the Black Dragon intended to accept the tribe's loyalty, and the moment they accepted his protection, they would share in the legacy of the dragons. And in the name of the dragon, he vowed to return protection and stability to the tribe the group of beastmen celebrated. The protagonist asked if Portery wanted to become his familiar, and he agreed emotionally because he had dreamed of that his whole life. This made the dragon sigh. That ritual's sense of making him a familiar was complicated but necessary to forge their loyalty. He touched Porikuri's forehead with his own blood, and thus a stone appeared on his body, making him part of his servants. The dragon asked Porikuri what was going on with the rest of his tribe. He hadn't imagined there were so many kobolds in the group. The others said their masters should decide for them. Not long ago, the Cobalt tribe was attacked by a group of eater caps. They led a horde of demonic spiders and ended up stealing the territory occupying the Cobalt's former mine. They led part of the tribe to escape and settle in this current cave. The main character was taken aback by the news. A mine meant cash, and cash meant he could snag some healing potions to help Anna feel better, even if just for a bit. Plus, he could even crash on a bed made of gold. So he asked Pori what kind of mine their tribe used to own and how many eater caps were hanging around. Porikuri reported that it was a silver mine. There were 5 eater caps, and they were pretty nasty by nature with a particular craving for brain matter. Eater caps had a mouthpiece that looked like a flute. They used it to control their spiders, and there were tons of those little critters. The protagonist asked the system if he could check the status panel for the eater caps. The system replied that it had no info available. He could even buy a book to learn about them. He was shocked to find out that such a ragged book cost 900 points. Talk about a total ripoff, which made him furious with the system. He even managed to get a refund. Anna was puzzled asking what was up, but he couldn't find the words to explain. Iniwagi grabbed the book and got the lowdown on the eater caps, including their looks and details. They had a strong, upright torso, compound eyes, and sharp, venomous fangs. They were a wicked level 28 group. Each one was at level 3. These creatures-controlled spiders were scared of fire and had shells that offered some defense. They couldn't handle acid or water attacks. Just looking at them made the protagonist feel like he was losing his mind. His dragon's acid breath wouldn't do much against them. Close combat was risky, since he could get surrounded by their spider hordes. If he could tweak his dragon breath, maybe they'd stand a chance, and he pondered how to rack up system points. He checked and found he could unlock new abilities, but for 1,000 points, he could modify his dragon breath in all sorts of ways. So he asked Porikuri if there was a nearby human bandit camp, or maybe a group of black beast mercenaries or something. Porikuri nodded. There were actually 2 bandit groups nearby, but they were just blood lion mercenaries. Still, he hadn't heard of any black beast mercenaries. And the protagonist instructed him to gather half the Cobalt soldiers. They could head out together to the nearest bandit group. Hostile forces usually dropped more system points, and bandit groups were concentrated, not scattered, which was perfect, the ideal spot to farm system points. With that, he told his girls to stay in the Cobalt village since it was safer, and warned Selena not to run off under any circumstances. So he set off for the Silver Moon Forest toward the bandit camp, and soon about 3 wagons rolled into the village as their leader returned. The humans celebrated because they had triumphed in their raid. They cheered for their chief, who was quite powerful. They had scored big from that raid with their hundreds of comrades in the camp. They wouldn't have to stress for the rest of the month. Suddenly, the chief glanced to the side and spotted a group of men carrying a chest, claiming it was a gift for their chief. A man rushed in frantically, reporting that a black dragon was approaching. He had entered and was wrecking everything in sight. The protagonist stormed the camp and attacked until everyone was running and screaming for help. It was the black dragon closing in. Despite that, they were powerless since the dragon was flying too high, and they were caught in his aerial assault. They could barely see through the pain. Meanwhile, the protagonist was getting notifications that he was racking up more points thanks to the battle. In the end, they emerged victorious, and the Kobolds celebrated their grand win. They told him there were plenty of chests around. It must have been what was stolen. They confiscated everything they found, and the protagonist agreed it was indeed a fantastic haul. They should take it back to the lair for now. Inside the boxes, they managed to stash not just cash, but fruits and various important potions and food that had been left behind. But what really caught the dragon's eye was the transformation potion that was there. The low-level transformation potion was now in his possession. It allowed non-human beings to transform into their human form, inheriting 10% of their strength for 1 hour. With that, he could turn back into a human and return to Anna and the others in a more friendly form. He could even picture them being impressed by his new look. Selena might even apologize for her earlier rudeness. Still, if you were to calculate his age in dragon years, he'd basically be a little kid, which is just wild. Anyway, he decided to go for the potion. It would only last an hour, and he could switch back to his normal self once the effects faded. It didn't take long for him to transform into his human form, but Pork was left dumbfounded because the dragon had suddenly turned into a human, and the protagonist himself was baffled about where his clothes had vanished to after ending up so exposed. The system told him to hang tight. Because of the quick transformation, the system was still loading the new data. Before long, he was dressed properly. He looked almost as handsome as he did in his past life, at least. He was a bit anxious about the differences between humans and dragons, knowing some things just couldn't be done. But now everything was cool. 6 hours in human form should be plenty. And he asked poor Curry if everyone was ready to roll. The kobolds reported that once the chests were loaded, all the gear would be set to go. Now was the time. They could head back to the lair, and as expected, the potion's duration was super handy. He could switch between human and dragon whenever he wanted. Meanwhile, Selena was hanging out with Anna and thought it was the perfect chance to make a break for it. Anna asked where she was headed, and Selena paused, saying she just wanted to take a little stroll. She chuckled, asking where they should go. Their dragon hunt had flopped. The mercenary squad had been completely wiped out. Even the most basic support mage would have a better shot than her if she came back empty-handed like this. Still, Anna was too caught up with the little kobolds being born, not even thinking about escaping. Selena asked if she wasn't scared of all the evil dragons that had captured her. Anna replied that actually the dragon was pretty nice. That really threw the mage for a loop. It wasn't long before the kobolds spotted that the protagonist was back. Selena was shocked they returned so quickly. And of course, the protagonist showed up all cheerful to greet them. But when he noticed the village was filled with fainted kobolds, and Selena was barely standing, struggling to keep her eyes open, when he got closer, he asked what had happened, and she told him Anna had been snatched by the spider monsters. She apologized, saying it was all her fault. She had failed to protect Anna while he was gone. Even though that was her only job, Selena thought he would see her as completely useless. Whether in the mercenary group or anywhere else, she always seemed to mess things up. But he reassured her that it was all right. It was his fault for not getting back in time to protect the village. To his surprise, Selena's favorability shot up by 50 points because of that, and she had previously been at minus 30. Now she was at 20 points. He had successfully gained another NPC's favor. Her favorability had hit the first stage requirement. With that, the protagonist unlocked the ability Sage's Tears and was also rewarded with 2,000 system points. Then the dragon asked the system to trade for primary modification and primary accumulation of dragon breath. The exchange went through, and now he had spent his 2,000 system points. The modification was going to be pretty powerful, so he had to watch over his throat. Selena froze in shock when she saw the dragon suddenly coughing up blood, but he assured her he was fine. Then he instructed Port Curry to head for Itwin. After they dared to snatch Anna, it seemed they clearly didn't want to stick around in this world anymore. Deep in the Silver Forest, they followed the path Portickery led them down. Saying this was the territory of the spiders raised by the monsters, the mine up ahead was their stolen lair, and the protagonist urged them to hurry. They were going to attack the mine right now. No time to waste, but before the protagonist could take off, he suddenly found himself caught in a web filled with spiders. Unable to move, he unleashed his fire, taking out the giant spiders and racking up 300 system points. Then he stormed into the mine and demanded to know where the half-human girl they had just kidnapped was. As he moved forward, he shifted into his human form and pressed on until he found Anna trapped in the spider's web. Even a bit dazed, Anna caught the scent of the dragon and recognized him. It didn't take long for him to free her from the web. She thanked him for saving her, thinking that he actually looked pretty good in his human form too. The protagonist chuckled. After all, she meant a lot to him, so naturally he was going to save her. Just like that, her favorability shot up by 100 points. The system congratulated him for hitting the second stage of favorability and granted him the intermediate Devour ability. Special abilities could be solidified directly and were undergoing changes. He also scored 3,000 more system points. The intermediate Devour ability not only restores the body's condition, but also allows him to devour prey, boosting his strength and promoting physical growth regardless of age. He was ecstatic about racking up so many points. It was simply the result of sparing the lives of SS-ranked characters. They always rewarded him handsomely. It seemed that boosting favorability was way more effective than slaying monsters for experience points. But honestly, he was surprised that she recognized him right away. Anna chuckled, saying it didn't matter what form he took, she would always know it was him. Once home, the protagonist pointed out the potions for Anna to drink and recover from her illness. It was a healing potion made from herbs, and she needed to remember to drink it at the right times. Quickly, the potions also helped boost her favorability points. In fact, the protagonist felt that gaining just 1 point at a time was much slower than usual. Next to him, Selena got furious, questioning how he could keep making Anna drink potions like that. They were for healing, not meant to replace meals. He realized that mentioning sugar was actually a good idea, because maybe there were some sweets among the spoils of war that would make taking medicine easier. The protagonist started rummaging through the chests until he found one that looked particularly special. When he opened it, he was shocked to find a girl tied up and restrained inside. He asked what on earth that was, and Selena rushed over, questioning what he was doing, and slapped him for looking at the restrained girl with a creepy expression. Anna came over asking what was up with Selena, and she quickly ran to cover Anna's eyes, because kids shouldn't see stuff like that. Still, both girls ended up catching a glimpse of the girl tied up in the box, and he was just as confused. He ended up getting smacked as if he were the one who locked her in there. But if they didn't believe him, they could just ask the girl herself. When they removed this gag, the girl screamed, cursing that the bandits had captured her and demanding to be set free. Furious, Selena approached to calm the girl down, which only made the protagonist's favorability with Anna drop even more. He felt sad for being treated so unfairly and asked how poor Curry had explained things to them. Poor Curry replied that he had only done what the protagonist told him, loading the chests onto the cart and bringing them back. He had no idea there was a person inside, so it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, at that moment, a powerful will spread throughout the world. A notification popped up for the protagonist warning that a world mission would commence, generating a beginner village within 3 days for the arrival of the Chosen One. The protagonist asked Selena if she saw anything, and she grumbled that all she saw was a damn dragon, which made him complain because that wasn't what he meant. But it didn't seem like she had noticed the alert. So he asked the system what it meant regarding the arrival of a Chosen One. The system replied that permission had been granted for the world with a mortal destiny. In other words, the game world would soon be realistically impacted by an incomprehensible winter. This gamble concerned the fate of this world. The result was that the protagonist learned about eliminating the players. He was taken aback because apparently the players were supposed to be resurrected individuals from another world entering the game. He had never heard of a world becoming a game in real life, and the system confirmed that the players actually hailed from the water blue star. It was a world with a highly developed gaming industry, much like his own homeland. The protagonist pondered the notion of a parallel world. If that were true, he didn't need to worry about them. They were part of his people anyway. But still, it was impossible to wipe out the players since they could all revive. The system mentioned that players could be resurrected, but each time they came back, the delay would double from the last time. The first resurrection would take 5 seconds, the second would take 10, the third would take 20, and so on until their time limit ran out. Still, the main character was taken aback because with that math, in less than 23 resurrections, the respawn time would stretch to a whole year. And even if the players kept at it, they would just get weaker with each resurrection. After a year, they would have to watch themselves die over and over, growing more and more frustrated with their own failures. It was hard to figure out why he was stuck in this situation. He wondered if the NPCs in this world could also be brought back to life, which left him stunned. The rules were downright ridiculous. It was totally unfair. Players could respawn endlessly, but NPCs had to risk their life in Sval's a double insect battle. This wasn't a game, it was just an unjust invasion. The system even agreed that it could be seen that way. But as defenders, he had a better starting point than most players. The power scales were balanced, they were just shaped differently. Besides, the losing side was destined for destruction. Hearing that left him shocked, and he asked why that was the case. Maybe it was because that fantasy world had been turned into a game from the get-go. He questioned whether they had even bothered to get the consent of those trapped in the game. They were just toying with lives as if they were deities. Anna realized a moment later that the protagonist had shifted back into his dragon form. He was annoyed because he transformed too quickly, wasting the potions for nothing. She told him not to be upset since they had figured out what happened. It was the bandits who caused it, and it wasn't his fault. The protagonist tried not to think she was dodging the subject, but more than that, he couldn't wrap his head around why she was wearing different clothes than usual. Anna explained that her clothes were ruined, and Selena found those outfits in a box, so she had to change. When he glanced at Selena, he realized she had made both herself and the other girl switch into something new. He never knew she had such peculiar tastes, and she replied that it was just a disguise after all. Only classification, not even that other girl's head's rank. The protagonist thought about converting her into points in the system right away. In fact, when he paused to look at her, he ended up deciding to keep her as a pet because that seemed like a better idea. He really liked that, but it felt a bit like cheating, just making them switch back to their normal clothes instantly. The more time went by, the more the protagonist felt this world might genuinely be a setup game. Since fate allowed him to see that information, it suggested he should use it to battle the players. With that in mind, he could no longer afford to relax. And that's how all the monsters around him ended up pledging loyalty to him. It would be smarter to create a simple map and integrate them. Plus, he planned to check out what the system had in store for him and his abilities. Now, he had the variant Dragon Breath Primeval hunting the Devouring Dragon's Power Sage's Tears, which was a passive ability and experience sharing. The 5-dimensional attributes could be enhanced through daily training or leveling up. Taking out natives didn't give the protagonist any experience. He would need to take down players to gain more of that power. However, players faced no such restrictions. And since there were more natives, players naturally had plenty of chances to level up. That was a resource with a good appearance. Manipulators on both sides wanted players and natives to battle to the death. The 5 dimensions could be improved through training. By all accounts, this could indeed be a turning point. Then the dragon called one of the kobolds to come closer. He did. The kobold named Huck came into his service. The protagonist checked Huck's information, but wasn't too surprised to see he was indeed quite weak. He ordered the kobold to run around the cave for half an hour without stopping, or else he would eat him. This forced him to run for that half hour before finally stopping, and the protagonist was impressed because it actually wasn't bad at all. It seemed that training really could boost the 5-dimensional attributes, and just then the girls returned after changing clothes. Shortly after, they prepared a map of the Silver Moon Forest. It was actually drawn by the previous Kobold Chief. Each of those monster communities had their own leaders, and the protagonist ordered Porker to gather all the kobolds. They could bring their stuff because he had something big planned for them. Later on in Silver Moon, the leaders of the 3rd level Fire Rabbit, Snake, Chicken, and Boar were taken down. He actually reached the 3 leaders and told them to chill out. He had no plans to munch on them anyway, knowing that this world was facing a serious crisis, which is why he urged the leaders to band together. The Silver Moon Forest was their turf, so they could gear up to fight and kick the enemy out. The others eventually gave in to the dragon leader's orders, agreeing to work under his command and become one big happy family. He was taken aback because that's how the sage's tears were put to use. It was almost like the speech of a true hero. Whatever a hero says, everyone buys into it without a second thought. Suddenly, he felt like he was caught up in a pyramid scheme. The rabbit leader asked the great dragon how they could take on the enemies, since after all, they were pretty weak monsters, and the dragon nodded in agreement. What they needed to do next was pretty straightforward. They would simply start training. The protagonist put all the monsters through some intense training to conquer the forest and defend their territory. They could only sit tight and see how their hard work paid off. He definitely aimed to win that bet and make it out alive. At another point, the humans found themselves stopping in the city, shocked to look up and see something that had popped up. A giant hardass appeared along with a news message announcing that the game's betting world was about to kick off. One of the folks called was Daniel A. Jason, and even he had no clue what was going on or what the term player was supposed to mean. But not just Daniel Brenny and several others were pulled into the game where the system simply picked whoever it wanted. The first rule of this game was that players couldn't exit the game until they died. After death, players would enter the world square to wait for resurrection. They were supposed to complete missions because that would earn them invasion points. Points could be traded for items and daily necessities. They could also be used to buy resurrection time, so invasion points would always be up for grabs. The second rule of the game was that treasure chests would randomly pop up in the game world. These chests contained rewards like invasion points gear and other goodies. There were also spoils of war. The rewards could be traded as well as collected. Another rule stated that the time for the first and second resurrection was 5 seconds. Each time to return would double, so they needed to value their lives and tread carefully. In the Silver Moon Forest, the protagonist got a report saying that the results of the monster training were impressive. The gnolls and blackwater serpents near the forest had gathered under their command and were currently getting even stronger. He felt pretty satisfied until he was suddenly startled by a flood of notifications about the creation of a beginner village. The first rule was for players to descend to different areas of the world as beginners and settle into villages within 1 week for their own safety. During this period, anyone from the outside could be teleported inside the village. If it was a creature other than a player, it would be sent outside the village. Beginner Village number 1 of Sakura popped up on the Morgan Plains near the Silver Moon Forest. The protagonist was surprised too when a large golden chest appeared, and he realized he was the treasure guardian. When he opened it, however, there was nothing inside. This treasure chest might have just been a way to distribute the rewards, but rewards could only be claimed when a player opened it. It was bad enough that he couldn't be human anymore after transmigrating there, and now he was stuck guarding a treasure chest. So he started chatting with the Grey Wolf, Leader, the Snake, and all the others who had joined him. They needed to search for those chests in the forest and bring them all to him. And he ordered poor Curry to gather all the poison bombs, traps, and other stuff they, as kobolds, had made. The protagonist asked the system if there was such a thing as a world map. The world map had been updated after the players arrived. Unlocking it required 10 system points. He unlocked it after realizing it was a steal, and he sighed because it really was an unfair war. Although players were weak at the start, they had the upper hand in numbers, and now they had 7 extra days of completely safe development time. But based on his years of gaming experience, newbie players had a major flaw. They were way too curious. It didn't take long for all the treasure chests to be gathered up, and he commanded that they all be opened and shared out. They could set up poison traps, bombs, and other nasty surprises separately, then stash the treasure chests in the bushes nearby. They needed to hide them really well and keep it subtle. Haruri wondered why that was necessary, and he explained that if their human buddies came over, they should definitely roll out the red carpet. And of course, he'd be on guard duty for the real treasure chest this time, ready to do his monster thing. His monster. Meanwhile, over on the Morgan Plains player, Daniel Jason was grinding away, racking up resources. There was the world map, the forum, team formations, and sensory adjustments, the mission system, and a bunch of other stuff. But there was no button to log out. Everything felt way too real. There really was another world that had become a game. At the same time in the Dragon's Lair, Selena was honing her magic skills while the other girl, who was just hanging around, kept blaming herself for running off with Blaze. That guy sold her out to bandits just to save his own skin. She never wanted to see him again. Seeing the girl's rage, the protagonist thought that people from those days were all pretty scary. He couldn't even fathom how someone could have such a fierce look in her eyes. He hoped Anna would never turn out like them, and he kept giving her medicine so she'd heal up fast. Anna always expressed her gratitude for the potions, and her affection points kept climbing. It wasn't long before he got word that a hero had popped up in the strange barrier that had appeared, and the protagonist let out a sinister chuckle. Looks like someone was itching to dive into that other world. Meanwhile, back on the Morgan Plains, players could hardly believe how easy it was to level up. They even built a house once they hit level 5. Taking down a few small monsters for practice wouldn't hurt. But still, leaving the starter village felt a bit risky, and one of them suggested they head back. Another player grumbled that they were babysitting that coward because they cared too much about him. Otherwise, after 7 days, he wouldn't even make it on his own. He'd be begging to tag along later, and they might not even let him. Another player chimed in, saying as long as they had a piece of meat, he could at least get the bone. The cowardly player pointed out that there was a chest nearby, and the other two got pumped because they had stumbled upon treasure. But it turned out that all the chests they found only brought them trouble, and they never understood why they were filled with junk. Eventually, all the players got split up, and one of them ended up getting taken out by the protagonist just from being startled. Taking down a human player earned 10 system points. He was shocked at how weak they were, and it wasn't long before the cowardly player was found and taken hostage. The protagonist asked who he was and why they were trespassing in his territory. The player stammered that they were adventurers and it was their first time there. He shook with fear, saying they were just passing through and didn't want to cause any trouble. But the dragon himself didn't buy it, even though he had seen them using magic and attacking others just to clear their way. Then the player remembered he had the speed potion. The shop had sold it and he could use it to make a getaway. The player quickly bought the speed potion, spending 200 points, and the kobold pointed at the guy who suddenly bolted. The protagonist said he knew, but he could let him go. 7 days was plenty of time for the players to build up. Meanwhile, one of the lost players was wandering alone through the forest, clueless about any of this. That's when he stumbled upon a silver treasure chest and got pretty lucky. But unfortunately, he didn't have the key to open it. The system asked if he wanted to unlock it by spending 1,000 points to buy the key. The player was taken aback because that was way too pricey. In other games, taking down the treasure guardian would drop a key. And that's when he spotted the level 3 fire rabbit leader. It was just a rabbit and should be easy enough to handle. If he could sneak up on it and strike first, he might just win. He geared up to take down the little rabbit, but the player himself ended up taking a full punch from the rabbit. The giant rabbit questioned whether he was a smart aleck trying to snag the treasure chest, causing the player to back off in fright. He couldn't help but be amazed at how a level 3 rabbit could pack such a punch. That situation was anything but scientific, and he was at a loss for whether to call for backup or not. The rabbit urged him to open the chest, and he might think about letting him off the hook. With no other options, he decided to pop it open. So he forked over 1,000 points to unlock it and receive the key. But he never saw it coming that opening the chest would trigger a bomb to explode right in his face. Meanwhile, the humans were wrapping up their house construction. They successfully finished the houses and racked up invasion points for their efforts. They also built a tower that netted them 1,000 points. Jason was just about done setting up the wall to secure the area when he spotted an adventurer sprinting back. He asked what was going on, and the panicked adventurer, with tears in his eyes, claimed he saw a dragon, and everyone needed to run for their lives. Jason inquired about the dragon's location, and the others chuckled. After all, it had to be just an exaggerating kid, since this was a starter village. There was no way a dragon could be lurking around, but the terrified adventurer pointed towards the forest, insisting it was true. One of the adventurers had been taken out on the spot by it. He had only managed to escape after downing a speed potion. Jason remarked that if there really was a dragon, they wouldn't last long there. They needed to gather the wood and stone from the houses to build towers and walls for defense against the impending attack. The girl next to him felt a pang of sadness because she would have to part with the house she had just constructed. Meanwhile, Selena and the other girl were feeling bored. The protagonist asked what was bothering them, and Anna replied that Selena was sulking because her magic was on the fritz. Evelyn, the other girl, expressed a desire to take someone out. This caught the protagonist off guard, and he wondered how someone could say that with a grin. Anna must have really been tainted by darkness to say such things with that innocent look on her face. The protagonist received notifications that one of his followers had taken out a player, earning him 10 system points. Soon, Porkuri showed up announcing they had gathered all the treasure chests. They found a variety of items inside when they opened them. Among the loot, there were things like a book and parts of items to forge new materials. But what really caught the dragon's eye was the blueprint for a tower, something that piqued their interest. Apparently, it couldn't be utilized. He wondered if only human players could make use of it, or if there were other stipulations. Selena became intrigued by the ice skill book and approached the protagonist, asking him to hand over that magic book. Sun eventually agreed, and Selena was puzzled as to why he kept staring at her with such a dazed expression. In any case, he would lend her the book for a bit, and even so, the protagonist noticed that his favorability with her had gone up a notch. Later, Sunsei received a notification indicating that he was in a newly opened area placing a blueprint. He could confirm the vacant spot to start constructing a tower using the blueprint he had on him. As Sunayan had anticipated, even though that power couldn't be utilized inside his cave and near the tribe, he could still build outside. He saw only an empty simulation construction box reflected and had to focus to find a suitable location to set it up. Building a flaming arrow tower required 10 tons of stone, 3 tons of wood, 20 workers, 5 kilograms of food, and 12 hours of construction time. The available worker races included humans with a 20% boost in construction efficiency, kobolds with a 20% defense in construction. There were also goblins with a 20% increased mutation rate in construction, and dwarves with all construction attributes boosted by 10%. The host needed to provide the workers. Construction would kick off automatically once the workers entered the foundation. After the construction was finished, the memories related to the workers would be wiped clean and they would be sent back. And seeing that, Sunayan pondered if he really had to supply the workers, and quickly realized when Porkuri showed up after climbing up there, he ordered the kobold to head down now and find 20 strong kobolds. He was in the process of building that flaming arrow tower right now. But when he noticed poor Kuri had passed out, Sunayan realized that maybe he had pushed himself a bit too hard. In fact, the day carried on just like any other. As night fell, he noticed that Anna and the others should be catching some Z's. When he got back, he found the girls in a deep slumber. Only Anna was whimpering, calling out for her parents and telling the demons to scram. Sunny couldn't help but wonder about those demons. If the monster encyclopedia was on point, demons had been wiped out 1,500 years ago. So how were there still demons lurking around in her timeline? Even though she was scared, a woman crept up from behind and covered her mouth, urging her to stay quiet so they could make a clean getaway. The older sister tucked Anna away in the wardrobe, telling her to stay put no matter what and not to come out for anything. But later, that same sister got attacked right in front of her, triggering Anna's powers to awaken. Meanwhile, the protagonist pondered if all of this was just part of her nightmare and the illness that always had her feeling under the weather. After days of chugging herbs and potions, her health bar finally turned green after what felt like forever. But no matter what meds were thrown at her, Anna's remaining lifespan was stuck at 63 days with no sign of budging. Her status read that she was suffering from a serious illness and would kick the bucket in 63 days. He soon started to wonder if it could be heart failure. Just then, Anna jolted awake, but in that instant she lunged at the protagonist, who stumbled back in shock. At the same time, the other two girls woke up confused about why she was acting up in the middle of the night. The protagonist then explained that Anna was actually gone, prompting the three of them to dash out in search of her. It didn't take long before they stumbled upon the depths of the Silver Moon Swamp, where Anna was locked in a fierce battle with a monster. Her health bar was full but flashing red, and he was taken aback to see it was a level 2 stone-helmeted giant crocodile. The Swamp King was getting trampled like a bug. Just as Anna noticed, she fainted, and the dragon swooped in to save her before she could be gobbled up by the crocodile. On the ground, they realized Anna had truly passed out and was stealthily attacked from behind, so they had to act fast. That guy had some seriously tough skin. In the swamp, his dragon breath couldn't unleash its full force, so Sunayan told the system he wanted to upgrade to high-grade scale armor resistance, high-grade hardened claws and teeth, and an underwater breathable air sac. The system lamented that the upgrade would cost 10,000 system points, and he was short on cash for it. He agreed, and the system granted his wish after giving him a loan with an extra 50% interest. Nian got annoyed because the system was dragging its feet, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. The system warned that the upgrade could cause internal pain. Seeing the protagonist dive underwater, Selena rushed to check if he was still alive down there. She even asked if she could keep the ice skill book for herself, but just then Sunayan showed up, sending the crocodile flying. With his new powers, he took the crocodile down in an instant, to the point where Selena was even tempted to chow down on the charred meat. In the end, the three of them feasted, and the system acknowledged that Sunayan had devoured a giant crocodile. His body was ramping up its recovery speed. Soon, Sunayan stumbled upon a low-level magic attribute core. He was blown away to find it. He wondered if a monster could really condense such a magic core, and maybe that was why Anna had ventured so far out there. He also noticed that her health bar had dropped back down to low, just like at the beginning, and he asked the system if it had any clue about Anna's illness. But since there was no reply, he realized he really needed to figure out what disease was plaguing Anna and why she had suddenly gone berserk with such immense power. Then it hit him. He remembered hearing about priests. So Neon asked Selena if she knew where to find a powerful priest, and she replied she wasn't sure, but had been traveling with a group of mercenaries. They only picked up some potions and carried them around, so that kind of intel was beyond her reach. Then Evelyn chimed in, saying she knew where a priest lived right inside the kingdom of Onrius itself. But if he planned to head into the city, he'd end up in hot water. After all, bounty hunters were crawling all over the city now. Sunayan got it. That made sense, but he still had 6 transformation vials, enough to keep his human form for about half a day. As long as he timed it right, he should be in the clear. With his new powers, he took down the crocodile in no time, to the point where Selena was even interested in the charred meat. In the end, the three of them feasted, and the system recognized that Sunshin had devoured a giant crocodile. His body was ramping up its recovery speed. Soon, Sunsun stumbled upon a low-level magic attribute core. He was blown away to find it. He wondered if a monster could really condense such a magic core, and maybe that was why Anna had ventured so far out there. He also noticed that her health bar had dropped back down to low, just like at the beginning, and he asked the system if it had any clue about Anna's illness. But since there was no reply, he realized he really needed to figure out what disease was plaguing Anna and why she had suddenly gone berserk with such immense power. And then he remembered hearing about priests. So Nyan asked Selena if she knew where to find a powerful priest, and she replied she wasn't sure, but had been traveling with a group of mercenaries. They only picked up some potions and carried them around, so that kind of intel was beyond her reach. Then Evelyn chimed in, saying she knew where a priest lived right inside the kingdom of Onrius itself, but if he planned to head into the city, he'd end up in hot water. After all, bounty hunters were crawling all over the city now. Sunayan got it. That made sense. But he still had 6 transformation vials. It seemed like whether you were a human or a monster, if you were male, you were pretty much the same. At least that's what Evelyn thought. She wouldn't hesitate to ditch the other part when things got tough in pursuing her life goals, but Sunayan was curious why she was still hanging around when she should be rushing so they could head out together. They all took off, and he quickly noticed that his popularity had shot up. It must have been thanks to his epic battle skills. But seriously, 300 points, that was way too little. Sun was always griping about how the system was constantly robbing him of his points, just to mess with him. The system snatched those 300 points to knock off his loan. He still owed 9,000 points to clear up. Subneon had to hold off until he paid off those debts from that other world. Life under capitalism was no walk in the park. Outside the royal city of Onrius, the dragon showed up carrying Anna, and they were all set to continue their search. In the royal city of Andreas, where everyone worshipped the arrival of the great and fearless knight Blazer, it was actually quite a sight. They said Blaze took out an entire gang of bandits all by himself and even lopped off their leader's head, making him a hit with the crowd. They also heard he was on his way to Lyria with the great mage Mason. Sunayan couldn't help but wonder if that gang of bandits was the same one he had dealt with. It was wild that Blaze was taking credit for something he hadn't even done. He even claimed he had taken down a dragon. If Sunayan wasn't busy with something else right now, he would have had him executed just to teach him a lesson. Meanwhile, the protagonist kept heading toward the priest's house, following Evelyn's directions. The priest's name was Rogue. He was in a wooden house west of the royal city, right by a tree with white flowers. Evelyn didn't plan on going with them to the city, so she just passed the info along for Sunayan to follow. He knocked on the door, asking if Rogue was home, and Sunsen started to worry when there was no response. Maybe he was too old to hear. The protagonist just kicked the door open to get in. On the other side, Barbara, the intern, fell to the floor in shock. She apologized, saying they were looking for Rogue, and Barbara quickly got up, saying it was all good. The cost to fix the broken door would be 50 silver coins, which still made the protagonist chuckle a bit. She introduced herself as Barbara and asked if he wanted to see the professor, to which he replied that he was looking for Rogue to start a treatment. Then Barbara said that, unfortunately, the professor had gone on a trip because he couldn't cure Prince Amless's impotence. The protagonist asked if she knew where he went or when he would be back, and she said she didn't really know about that. And that's when Barbara spotted Anna and was enchanted, wanting to know if she was an ethereal being, impressed by how soft her ears were and how adorable she looked. But Barbara could instantly tell that Anna was sick and on the verge of death. Sunayan was impressed and asked if she was also a priestess, and she laughed, saying that although she was an internal priestess, she could still treat illnesses in her own way. He asked if she could figure out what was wrong with Anna. She had suddenly gone crazy the night before and then fell into a coma. Barbara guided them to lay her down on the treatment table first. Then she approached to start examining Anna, and Sunsen didn't quite get if that was really how priests treated illnesses. Now he could see why Amless's condition hadn't been cured. Then Barbara found what she was looking for and said that Anna had been hit by a brutal curse. The source of the curse was in her heart, and the other symptoms were just offshoots of it. Plus, that curse was extremely powerful. It would drain all the strength from the cursed person and, when triggered, send them into a frenzy. Subneon asked if once her body got a bit better, she could end up going berserk again, which would drain all her life force. Barbara agreed because she could see it that way, but unfortunately she couldn't cure Anna in her current state. She could temporarily treat the symptoms, but Sunshin needed to know that if she built up a resistance to the medications, her body would collapse. It would be like falling off a cliff. But there were 2 ways to break the curse. The first method was to end the curse by taking out the person who cast it. The second was to remove the injury by swapping out the cursed heart. Ideally, they should use a dragon's heart. Sunshin was taken aback because Barbara figured it out so fast. It was almost like she had a dog's nose for sniffing out his true identity, even though he was trying to hide his looks. The protagonist chuckled, asking what was so special about a dragon's heart anyway. After all, that was a tricky item to track down. Maybe there was another way to treat this. Just then, Barbara mentioned that unless he could find the legendary Great Spiritual Spring and take a dip in it, that might help delay the curse. But the Great Spiritual Spring had dried up, where he could head to the Winter Empire on the northern continent, where high-ranking priests could perform a purification ritual. However, Barbara worried that Anna might not have enough time to make it there. That's when she remembered something. He could seek out the witches. They always had all sorts of bizarre and amazing methods for treating patients, but their locations were usually a mystery. She only knew they had shown up in Ulster before. The protagonist asked about that since it was the first he had heard of it, unsure if something like that could even work. He suggested that Barbara could use healing magic to help her recover first, and then they could figure out the rest later. Barbara agreed, asking him to hold on for a moment, then turned around while Sun-san asked what she was looking for. She returned with a beginner's guide to basic healing, saying to relax, because everyone has to start somewhere. There's no need to be too anxious. Even so, Sunayan couldn't understand why she kept saying those things, as if she needed to remind herself. Then Barbara cast a spell on Anna and she woke up. He felt relieved to see she seemed all right, and Anna asked where they were. He told her they were in the city of Amlos. She had fainted out of nowhere, so he brought her to see a doctor. Barbara laughed when she realized she was right about him being a dragon, and that the girl might be the one who had been kidnapped a few days ago by the black dragons. So he asked what the big deal was, and Barbara reassured him that he didn't need to worry, because she had no plans to report him. As a priestess, she would help anyone in need of healing. Right now, she was exploring external healing magic. Heart transplants could be done even without magic, and she even showed up with a cut on her hand while suggesting the idea. She could offer a 20% discount that he might want to consider. Soon, Nayan grew concerned because it sounded a lot like modern surgery, and he replied that it wasn't necessary. Maybe he could find another way to solve this while still helping the patient in need. Anna didn't understand anything about the heart transplant, but Sunayan took her outside while Barbara stayed busy. Still, he was a bit shocked because she wanted to perform surgery while still flipping through the book on basic healing spells. Outside the royal city of Onrias, the protagonist walked with Anna, asking what was bothering her. Maybe she was still feeling off in some way. Anna asked if the illness she had was incurable, and Sunayan replied that it was just a curse. In the name of the dragon, he vowed to make her better as soon as possible, and she was touched that Sunny made such a promise for her. Anna reminded him never to promise to save her at the cost of his own life, and he assured her he understood, even though there was no need to worry because he would find a way to break the curse. That's when Sunayan suddenly got a notification from an NPC. A female NPC had sent him a summoning invitation, and the system asked how he wanted to respond. Meanwhile, inside the National Temple, the Sen NPC was performing a blessing ritual for the great goddess. Despite that, Sunayan received no further replies. Although they wanted to check it out, there were more pressing matters to deal with. Outside the Dragon's Nest at the Flaming Arrow construction site, the Cobalt tribe had gathered after finding Sunayan. They reported that the tower was nearly finished. He acknowledged that the efficiency was pretty impressive after all. Goblins were true whizzes when it came to construction. It looked like 4 more towers could be added to the schedule. The protagonist could see through the system the details of the first-level towers. They could receive upgrades with plenty of points to be added. It was fully automatic, firing just 1 arrow every 10 seconds. It was quite slow, so they could first test the power of the Flaming Arrow Tower. Sunny instructed Portakuri to take aim at the stone wall, and they launched a flame arrow to test its power. He was blown away by the destruction it caused. A single flame arrow had wreaked that much havoc. He wondered if this was some sort of magic for beginners. No surprise, the attack speed was sluggish with those massive critical hits. Since construction workers were a different breed, the outcomes were bound to vary. Studian pondered if different monsters would yield similar results when operating it, so he commanded Porikuri to gather 20 of those fiery rabbits. He wanted to run an experiment and asked the rabbit leader if he and his fiery crew could jump in and give it a whirl. Sunayan felt like things were finally falling into place. It appeared that the tower's attacks could adapt based on the creature using them and their summoning abilities. With these towers, guarding the dragon's lair was a piece of cake. The only hiccup was that they needed to boost the range and attack speed. He inquired with the system about what it would take to upgrade the Flaming Arrow Tower. The system responded that upgrading the Flaming Arrow Tower required 10 magic beast cores specifically from fire-type beasts of the 3rd tier. This was a low-grade magic core that could be snagged by taking down the stone-armored crocodile in the Silver Moon Swamp near the mountains. It seemed finding that many third-tier magic beasts in the Silver Moon Forest was going to be a challenge. The mountains were likely the only place to look. So Neon decided to scout the Silver Moon Mountains, and soon Anna appeared saying Evelyn and Selena were at it again. The protagonist could only chuckle at the thought of their antics. Anna urged him to snap out of it. If he didn't intervene, the dragon's lair would be toast. Neon had completely spaced that both of them were powerful mages and dashed off to break up the fight, suggesting they take it outside if they wanted to brawl. Since they wouldn't back down, Sun Seon transformed into a dragon to separate them, and Anna mentioned they were squabbling over the ice mage's skills. Selena couldn't grasp it, but Evelyn picked it up just by watching once, so they dove right into a brawl. Sunshine remarked that it was ridiculous to fight over such a trivial issue and that in his territory they should abide by his rules. If it happened again, he suggested they at least duke it out without magic, but neither of them was in the mood for games. Alone, Selena was fuming because she felt inadequate, not understanding why she couldn't master something like that, and she didn't want to feel useless. She kept attacking so fiercely that a piece flew off and smacked him on the head. He grumbled when Selena pointed out that he was the one who told her to go out and fight. He said it was just a silly spat. There was no reason to get so worked up that she was out in the middle of the night punching trees. She could have at least let others catch some Z's. Selma admitted she was feeling worthless and said if none of the usual routes worked, she could try one that no one had dared to take before. This left her puzzled, and he quipped that, given her aggressive nature, dark magic might be her calling. Selena shot back, "Dark magic is considered heretical in the wizarding world. It definitely isn't for me." The protagonist's eyes widened because she actually had a bit of a heretic vibe, but still, Selena appreciated that he chased after her and cared. He racked up 50 more favorability points with her. Meanwhile, time passed in the Silver Moon Forest's intermediate layer, where a group of hidden girls spotted some plump fire rabbits that caught their eye. They were itching to feast on them. They could bet their meat was succulent, and the big gold chains around their necks were also something they coveted. They had no idea such hefty fire rabbits could exist in that forest in the first place. Those rabbits usually didn't eat and drink so lavishly, and they were even sporting collars, regardless of how odd they were. They stood no chance against the bird demon race. They had heard whispers of a dragon lurking in this forest. Everyone needed to tread carefully. She would count to 3, and then they would all pounce together. But just as they lunged at the rabbits, believing they could pull off a successful ambush, they froze in their tracks. The rabbits revealed their true power, and the girls were swiftly overwhelmed by each of their attacks. They were no match for them. The rabbits showed their true colors as super powerful beings, and the girls were left battered by their relentless attacks. Defeating them was out of the question. It didn't take long for the trio to get caught and dragged to the dragon's lair. Stmayan questioned if they were the ones who had attacked his familiars. They quickly explained that they didn't mean to offend him. They were just really hungry. A few days back, a gang of hawk eagles swooped in from the other side of the Silver Moon Forest and raided the nests in the Silver Moon Mountains. They snatched foodstone sheep and even took lives from their tribe, which piqued his curiosity. Apparently, there was another rookie village on the other side of the Silver Moon Forest, and they pleaded with him to help them reclaim their home and rescue their people. Hana, the leader of the bird demons, vowed she would gladly give her life and her tribe to serve the great dragon along with their stone sheep. Now, Sunsei could see where they were coming from, but he wondered why they specifically targeted the fire rabbits. Hana was the bird demon's leader at level 17. She had some unique skills like flying and a melodious singing voice. Plus, the old Six had a knack for reconnaissance, and her voice could confuse players. Sunsei then marked her forehead and accepted her request, officially making her and her tribe part of his crew. Anna, noticing that the protagonist planned to head to the Silver Moon, chimed in that they all wanted to tag along too. He turned them down, explaining they weren't just out for a leisurely stroll, they were going to fight. Anna insisted she could help, and Selena and Evelyn backed her up, saying they could do the same. Suman wondered if they all turned out this way after everything that happened. He advised the others that if anyone entered the forest while he was gone, they should carry on as usual and could leave the box in an accessible spot. They all flew to the location of the demon's nest, and Hannah warned that the beasts inside were incredibly fierce and clever, so he should tread carefully. The protagonist began to regret bringing Anna along, especially when he caught a whiff of a strong blood scent. It was dangerous inside, so Sunsei told Anna to wait outside for him. Hana should stay with Anna to keep her safe, while he ventured into the cave where he found several level 28 hawk beasts lurking. He could hardly believe that so many third-level magical beasts were hanging out there in the Silver Forest. No wonder the bird demons had been driven into hiding. Even though their strength was lower, he couldn't handle their sheer numbers. Maybe he should consider bringing more backup next time. But before he could make a move, the beast spotted him and charged. With no chance to escape, he decided to focus on the fight. After taking down the creatures, the system congratulated him for snagging 23 fire magic cores and 345 system points. It seemed the magical beasts had already condensed their magic cores within them, which could come in handy. That's when he noticed one beast still kicking. It was a mutant hawk demon notable for its massive size. Although its size slowed it down, it packed a punch, making it tough to take down. The two engaged in battle and ended up with injuries. As expected, it was surprisingly quick. He heard Anna shouting for him to be careful, just as he got hit by its wings, causing him to fall before he could rejoin the fight. Anna, worried about the protagonist, asked Hana to check on him, and they rushed over to Sunsei. Anna ran to see if he was okay and why he was bleeding so much, even tearing up, hoping he wouldn't die. Sunsei quickly got up, urging her not to cry because he was still all right. But Anna was concerned because he was losing too much blood. He reassured her he was fine, just a bit hungry. He would be okay soon after a quick snack. Suddenly, he received a black core. It was a good thing he swallowed it quickly, as it boosted his resistance and helped him defeat the hawk beast. But just then, Anna was suddenly snatched away by one of the hawks. She was attacked and ended up falling after being released. Anna dropped from a great height but felt relieved when she landed in the water. The spring water felt nice. If only he were there, he could have enjoyed it too. Suddenly, the center of the water began to glow. She called out to see who was there. A figure emerged from the water, expressing relief that someone had finally discovered that place. Anna asked who it was, and the woman replied she was the guardian of the great spiritual spring. She could see what was inside Anna. It seemed something was blocking the flow of her power. Anna approached, surprised because the girl resembled her sister. The guardian clarified she wasn't her sister. She had taken that form because it was how she remembered her. The guardian told her to let go of the pain and gave Anna a kiss. Suddenly, things changed, and she found herself at the bottom of the spring, discovering a bunch of treasures. A little while later, he showed up looking for Anna, and she waved to let him know where she was. When he came down, he was taken aback because Anna had suddenly gained a massive spiritual power that not only wiped out all the negative effects, but also unlocked a ton of other skills. He asked if she was all right after everything that just went down. Anna nodded, mentioning she had just met her sister, which made Sunayan curious if he could meet his future sister-in-law. She asked if he was worried, and when he agreed, her favorability with him shot up by 50 points. Now, Sunshian had racked up more system points for boosting his favorability, allowing him to unlock the advanced devouring power. Plus, consuming different materials could provide various enhancements, like munching on iron ore would boost the iron content in the host's scales. He decided to use the 5,000 points he earned to try and settle his debts, even though he still had a little left over. Sunayan grinned, asking the system if it couldn't just wipe his debt clean. The system replied that it was against the rules. The protagonist shot back, questioning if they could really talk about rules when he existed in that world. If the players knew the truth, they'd be blown away. Since the system itself had bent the rules a bit, why not do it again? It shouldn't be a big deal. The system then explained that based on the transformation direction given, it would break down the host transformation plan into several stages. Each stage would require a chunk of the transformation fee, and Sunayan realized it was just an installment plan. At least it was way better than the ridiculously expensive transformation loans he used to rely on. Apparently they could negotiate like that without any hassle. The system warned that he could only use what he bought after settling the debt. Subneon chuckled, thinking the system was still too naive to argue with him. That's when Anna caught the protagonist's eye because there were tons of treasures nearby. When he opened one of the chests, he froze at the sight of several bones and wondered what in the world that was supposed to be. Then Ensign told her not to open the boxes yet, even though there were Purple Water Attribute magic books inside. Anna didn't really hear him and kept on opening the chests. At least it was a stroke of incredible luck. Anna was doing such a great job opening the chests that she almost looked like a true protagonist. Anna pointed out all the stuff she found inside the chests and wasn't even sure if she should be that confident. He had risked his life to get all that, and she was just breezing through, opening all the boxes. It felt a bit like a waste. The protagonist even ended up getting teased by the system, which quickly backtracked, saying he was the best of all, just to avoid getting on his bad side. So he couldn't believe it when he saw the system always pushing female products in the shops. And the system defended itself, claiming it thought its suggestions were top-notch. Releasing loans wasn't out of the question. After that little chat, suddenly Hannah popped up thanking him because her people had been rescued and could return to the dragon's lair. He got the situation and told her to head back first. He and Anna would follow a bit later. Meanwhile, in the human village, the cowardly adventurer insisted that there really were dragons in the Silver Moon Forest. But everyone laughed at him because he hadn't seen any. They barely spotted rabbits. He probably got spooked by the shadows of the trees. Everyone kept laughing at him even after he knocked down some houses to build a low tower that shot arrows. Still, the cowardly adventurer was worried because things could go south, and Jason interrupted. He suggested they needed to investigate further. He would take some folks to check out the entire Silver Forest. The cowardly adventurer was furious because everyone was laughing and doubting him. If they were acting like that, they might as well just go ahead and meet their doom. Back at the lairs, Sunsai checked out his new advanced devouring skill, which could promote physical growth even with age. He was impressed by that ability to evolve by eating other things. He thought that if devouring iron ore was tricky, swallowing rocks might just do the trick. Still, chowing down on minerals was about as enjoyable as chewing on cardboard. But the system confirmed he had munched on some rocks, boosting the strength of his shell by 1%. What really grabbed his attention was that while his toughness shot up, his speed took a nosedive. It seemed he couldn't just go around munching on anything. After all, he'd have to experiment with different foods to find out what worked best. He tried eating gold, which beefed up his scales and made him more fire-resistant. Nibbling on silver strengthened his scales and made him resistant to poison. Gobbling up a mountain wolf boosted all his stats when he was hungry, but in the end, Sunshin only saw a slight increase in his stats. He even accidentally bit his own tongue, and the system chimed in that devouring black dragon meat enhanced the purity of the Chamisodu Lapata gene. That new term piqued his curiosity. Was it some ancient dragon gene or perhaps a distant relative? If it was a male dragon, it could be his great-great-grandfather. If female, his great-great-grandmother. So he kept running a few more tests. It seemed that munching on minerals like gold and silver could amp up scale resistance. Silver provided poison resistance while gold offered fire resistance. There was a mine close to the dragon's nest worked by kobolds, but snagging gold would be trickier. After taking down the king of a certain country, strolling through the human world shouldn't be too tough anymore. Suddenly, Anna popped up showing off some interesting finds, and they were all pretty cool. That lucky character trope was a bit over the top, and it didn't take long before they headed back to the dragon's lair. Poor Akari reported that they had been quietly keeping tabs on the hero's movements in the forest these past few days, adding new items to the open treasure chests. The protagonist praised him, but hoped the items in the chests were genuinely valuable. Akari replied, "No need to worry. They were just some cooked stuffed intestines. Those guys seemed really thrilled to get them." Sun hadn't expected pork curry to be so quirky as to trade treasures for stuffed intestines. Then Hana suddenly showed up to announce she had found silver, and Sunayan felt a wave of relief. It seemed the players were itching to dive in and were ready to take the bait. He ordered pork curry and the fire rabbits to escort the soldiers to the flaming arrow tower for an attack. The Blackwater serpents and chicken snake beasts could set up an ambush, and everyone started gearing up for the big battle. In the Silver Moon Forest, the humans kept whining because there weren't even any monsters or animals around. Still, Jason warned them to be cautious. When things seemed too good to be true, it might just be a trap, but the girl scoffed, believing nothing could go wrong. They were just dumb monsters. But it didn't take long before the players started getting picked off by the monsters one by one, and casualties began to mount. The players were ambushed by the monsters, and Jason was stunned because, for some reason, the jackals, which were supposed to be common, were tough to handle. He managed to take down a few monsters and level up, but it was still rough, and he shouted for everyone to run. Jason made his way to the outer gorge of the dragon's nest, urging everyone not to stop since it seemed they were no longer being chased. The monsters were more interested in driving them away than fighting. He wondered if something worse lay ahead. One of the players pointed out some odd growths on the cliff wall that looked like giant bamboo shoots. A character used appraisal to check what it was, and Jason found it strange because it seemed out of the ordinary. Suddenly, they realized that what was hidden above were flaming arrow towers, and everyone froze in shock at the sight. This meant there had to be a human lord in that forest, which should be impossible since this was monster territory. With priests and mages protecting them, they shouldn't have anything to fear, but just then an arrow zipped past his face, and the player froze. Still, he let it go, just as he suspected. The arrows were even worse than expected. Besides being thick, they had no advantages, but when they least expected it, the arrow opened and released toxic gas. Jason shouted for everyone to cover their mouths and noses for protection. That's when several flaming arrows rained down on them and they took off running in a panic. This made Sunayan chuckle. He was thrilled because he had upgraded the flaming arrow towers, boosting their range and power, and even enhanced the types of arrows they shot. Anna offered her assistance, mentioning she had just mastered using the water and light sphere for attacks, too. The protagonist declined, still a bit stunned that she had ventured all the way here instead of staying safe in the cave with Evelyn and Selena. Jason urged everyone to keep calm. The mages could stack shields and the priests needed to start healing. The strategy was in motion. As long as they avoided direct hits, they could hold out longer. Suddenly, everyone pointed skyward, their jaws dropping as they spotted the black dragon soaring above, shocked that it was real. Stan welcomed them, noting they had entered his domain despite being mere insects. Jason froze, feeling the menacing aura of the evil dragon. He couldn't believe the dragon was real. The coward from earlier hadn't been lying after all. Still, Jason managed to steady himself, realizing it was just a young dragon. This time he was leading the novice village's assault team. If they could take down the black dragon now, he could claim the title of the best player in the entire world. Sunayan called them scum and readied himself to wipe them all out.